Welcome, welcome. Welcome to our blood sugar management workshop. Um, we are talking all things blood sugar management today. Just send a note in the chat if you have any questions, or raise your hand. But we are going to talk about blood sugar and why managing your blood sugar is important for both diabetics and non-diabetics. I'll get to that in a second. And my name is Hannah. I'm a dietitian. I work with UCLA through the Rec Center. I provide one-on-one counseling sessions, as well as run one of the DPP programs, which is the Diabetes Prevention Program. So we'll get started. All right. All right, I have like a little PDF version over here, not quite the PowerPoint version. So this is just my standard disclaimer. I'll read it to you very quickly. The contents of this presentation are strictly for informational purposes only and not intended to treat or diagnose. You understand and agree that you're fully responsible for your use of this information provided in the presentation. You understand that this presentation is not intended as personalized advice and should not be treated as a substitute for consultation with a licensed healthcare practitioner, such as your physician. All right. Okay. So blood sugar management is for everyone. It is not just for diabetics or pre-diabetics. It's important to make sure that we're managing our blood sugar so that we can prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes. And as you'll see, we'll talk about some signs of high blood sugar and low blood sugar. We want to prevent that. So it really is for everyone. We want to make sure that we are not on a crazy roller coaster of blood sugar levels and that we're staying pretty stable. All right. Okay. So today we're going to cover these topics. First, what is blood sugar? We'll go through the signs of high blood sugar and low blood sugar levels. We'll talk about high blood sugar health risks and then factors that will affect your blood sugar levels. So both food factors and non-food factors. And then overall, what a balanced blood sugar lifestyle even looks like. Okay. And I'm sorry, I think I'm using a different laptop today and all of my photos didn't transfer, but I will go ahead and send my supervisor a version that has all of the photos in it. The content is there, but the fun photos aren't. So, but that's okay for today's presentation. So what is blood glucose? So you might hear it as blood glucose or blood sugar. Both of those are used interchangeably, and I might say either one of those throughout the presentation. So it's simply just the amount of glucose or sugar that's in your blood. So glucose comes from food, and how does that happen? When we eat, our body is going to break down that food into glucose. And those glucose molecules will enter the bloodstream and they will be regulated by a hormone that we call insulin. And the pancreas is what produces insulin, okay? And once it's regulated, the glucose is going to go to all different parts of the body to do what? To provide energy. So glucose is the body's main energy source. So that's why it's very, very important, extremely important to talk about this topic. Obviously, we need glucose. If we didn't have glucose, we'd be dead. So talking about blood sugar, blood glucose stability is important. And also just like a quick note that glucose fluctuation is normal. It happens to everyone. And I put a star next to it because um, there are varying levels of normalcy when it comes to glucose fluctuation. And we'll talk about what is a healthy fluctuation and what might not be. Okay. All right. So, some common signs of high and low blood sugar levels. Some common signs of high blood sugar levels, some people call it the three Ps. Polyuria, which is frequent urination. It's also important to remember that, not all of these signs mean that you have high blood sugar or low blood sugar necessarily, but these can be some common signs. So, polyuria, that's frequent urination. You find yourself going to the bathroom every 30 minutes or even every hour. Polydipsia, excessive thirst. So, if you're feeling like you're just constantly thirsty, have to take a sip of water all the time, now we're in dry conditions, but in general, if you're just feeling like you're just always drinking water and maybe not quite hydrated. And polyphagia, excessive hunger. So maybe you're eating more than normal. The more our blood sugar goes up, the more we want to eat because it's quickly used up by the body. And then some signs of low blood sugar are like dizziness and headache. Maybe you'll start to feel very, very tired, exhausted, fatigued, um, a little bit shaky and jittery. Obviously, hunger. You'll feel hungry if you have low blood sugar. And sweating too can be a sign. I don't know if you've experienced that before. Some of these can be very, very common. Okay. So these are some of the health risks of consistent high blood sugar levels, and I put a star next to consistent because not all blood sugar spikes will lead to these health risks. So that means, say for example, I have a large cake right in front of me. If I eat all of that cake all at once, my blood sugar is going to spike incredibly high. But that doesn't necessarily make me a diabetic. And that also doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to have these eye problems, the kidney damage, the nerve damage, cardiovascular disease. It just means that my blood sugar will spike all at that one point. Now, if I have a whole cake every single day or every other day for a week, 2 weeks, months, years, and I eat in that kind of a way where I have a lot of blood sugar spikes, then I might develop prediabetes, later on maybe diabetes, and then I might experience some of these long-term health risks. So again, eye problems, so eyesight issues, kidney damage, maybe your kidneys will start not functioning as well as they could. Nerve damage, if you've ever heard of neuropathy, so like tingling in fingers and toes, and cardiovascular disease. It could directly affect cardiovascular disease. So, again, this is more of a prolonged way of thinking of these health risks. It's not just, if you eat like a big meal today and have a blood sugar spike, that all of these are going to happen. Okay. So, which foods specifically are going to increase blood sugar levels? Now, to some degree, all foods will if they're broken down and we get glucose from these foods. However, these are very specific to carbohydrate foods, and these specific foods will increase your blood sugar a bit more quickly than other foods, right? So first, foods that are high in added sugars. So these are processed snacks, desserts, baked goods, candy, chocolate. Um, and you can find added sugars on the back of the label. It will tell you, how many grams of added sugars. These are the sugars that are not naturally found in that food. But then that brings me to my next food group is foods that are high in naturally occurring sugars. So carbohydrates, they're sugar, right? So bread, pasta, rice, fruits, potatoes, sweet potatoes, other types of starchy vegetables. These foods are carbohydrates. They have naturally occurring sugars. They will break down into glucose in the blood. And we'll talk later on, um, healthier sources and why certain high fiber carbohydrates will be better for you than low fiber carbohydrates, like number one over here. Um, Three sugar sweetened beverages, so sodas, energy drinks, sweetened coffees and teas. Also, like think of like kombuchas. You'll also be able to find out if they are sweetened by looking at the back label again and seeing if they have added sugars. And then all fruit smoothies. So when I say all fruit, I mean that the smoothie itself is made with only or mostly fruit. Um, and these are all to say that it's not necessarily saying, okay, you can't eat any of these foods anymore. Again, like I said, I mentioned before, remember, glucose is very important. We need sugar in our bodies. Choosing the source is important, which we'll kind of go over in a moment. Um, but it's important to remember that if you are diabetic and need to watch your blood sugar levels a little bit more carefully, it's just important to be aware of what foods will increase your blood sugar. And if you're not diabetic, or maybe you just have someone in the family who has diabetes and just kind of want to make sure that you don't develop type 2 diabetes, again, just good to be aware of what types of foods can increase your blood sugar. Doesn't mean you have to completely remove any of these from your diet. Okay. I'm sad all my pictures aren't on here. All right, so what other food and non-food habits can affect blood sugar? So it's not just the food itself. Skipping meals. So if you think about it, when we eat a meal, our blood sugar will go up, right? And then over time, after we eat that meal, our blood sugar is going to slowly go down. Okay. Um, and then eventually we might get to a point where our blood sugar is going to start dipping into the low region. Um, for some people, that could be about 4 to 5 hours after your last meal. If we decide to skip the next meal, our blood sugar is going to go to a low. And then what's going to happen when we eat the next meal is our blood sugar will spike a little bit more quickly and more intensely than it would have if we didn't skip a meal. Um, and again, with a lot of these, it's more of a health risk when something is done consistently and frequently over time, more long term. If you accidentally skip a meal today, again, your blood sugar levels aren't going to increase dramatically. But if you have any of these poor habits over time, more frequently, it can lead to prediabetes or to diabetes. So skipping meals is one of them. Kind of similarly, inconsistent carbohydrates. So not so much on the timing, but more on the amount of carbohydrates you eat in a particular meal compared to your other meals of the day. So, maybe for breakfast, you have a very, very small breakfast, not a lot of foods, not a lot of carbohydrates. Um, Lunch might be moderate in carbohydrates. Dinner, what is it? Maybe very, very heavy in carbohydrates. Maybe it's a very heavy pasta dish with garlic bread on the side. Um, so when we have inconsistency in our carbohydrates, if one meal is heavier in carbohydrates than the other, and a distinct heaviness, right? So not just by a couple grams different. This can also, over time, if done frequently, increase our blood sugar levels. Lack of physical activity, being physically active can help to reduce those blood sugar levels. It helps us by entering the bloodstream in a healthier way. We use the glucose in a more efficient way. Smoking and excessive alcohol intake. Alcohol is a type of sugar. I'll go over these a little bit more in depth in the next couple slides. But smoking and excessive alcohol intake can increase your blood sugar. Poor stress management. So stress actually can directly affect blood sugar levels. It can increase blood sugar levels. And again, like with all the other factors that we've been going over, it's the frequent, more chronic stress that will affect your blood sugar levels. And then, of course, lack of quality sleep. We've been learning more and more over the years. Sleep is so, so, so important. So, of course, the quantity, how many hours you're getting, but the quality of your sleep as well. Do you wake up well rested? Are you, tossing and turning in the middle of the night? Are you getting up multiple times? Are you checking your phone in the middle of the night? So lots of factors like that. Okay. So kind of turning on those, those previous factors, going more into depth now on what does a healthy blood sugar balance lifestyle even look like? What do I have to do to make sure that my blood sugar levels stay stable? How do I incorporate this into my own lifestyle? So, the first two things that are really important, especially when it comes to your diet, are choosing lean proteins and choosing fiber rich carbohydrates. So, just kind of directing your attention to this smaller, just this little prompt at the bottom where I say protein and fiber act as the glue to glucose. So protein and fiber, I kind of want you to think of blood sugar levels as a little bit of a roller coaster, right? So when we eat something, our blood sugar will go up. And after some time, after we start digesting, our blood sugar will go back down. Now, protein and fiber are extremely important in this process because, like I mentioned, they act as a glue to glucose. And I think it's something easy to remember, the glue to glucose. So, as you eat something and your blood sugar starts going up, fiber is the glue on those roller coaster tracks that ensure that the blood glucose uptake in your body is slower. So that means it won't spike like crazy and it won't spike really, really high. Fiber enables your blood sugar to be released slowly into the bloodstream. Okay. And then on the way down, protein again is acting as glue to glucose on those roller coaster tracks. Um, Allowing the blood sugar to drop at a slower pace. And so this is why we say protein is a satiating nutrient because it allows your body to feel more satiated because your blood sugar is not dropping out of nowhere and you feel hungry again. I don't know if you've ever eaten, something very high in carbohydrates. Maybe you had a snack of chocolate or just bread or just crackers. And you're like, I don't understand. I just had a snack like a half hour ago and I'm hungry again. Not satiated because it's lacking protein. That snack is lacking protein. And protein, again, is the glue to glucose on the way down of that roller coaster, allowing your body to use that glucose more efficiently and not just shoot straight down. I hope that makes sense. Are there any questions on that? Okay.
So far, so clear. Thank you.
And I'll good. Okay. um, and I have my email at the end of this presentation too, if anyone has questions. So how do we do this? What do we choose? How do we choose the right proteins and fiber-rich carbs? So for protein, you want to aim for about a quarter of your plate. Everybody is a little bit different, but about a quarter of your plate coming from a lean protein source. So fish, chicken, any kind of poultry, lean cuts of beef or pork if you choose to eat that, beans, lentils, tofu, low-fat dairy, nuts, eggs. We have a lot of protein options. And then choosing fiber-rich carbs. And I always like to stress, always very important to say, carbs are important. Don't skip out on the carbs. Your body needs carbohydrates, especially if you are an athlete or using a lot of energy every day. How do we choose the best carbohydrates? So if you remember from a couple of slides ago, we talked about what are the foods that increase blood sugar. And that comes from both sources that have added sugars and sources that have naturally occurring sugars. So we want to choose those more naturally occurring sugars, right? For our carb source, for our energy source. And then, like I mentioned, fiber is so important to act as glue to glucose when we're going uphill on that roller coaster. So we want to choose fiber-rich carbohydrates. So about half of your plate, you'd want to have those fiber-rich carbs, fruits, vegetables, mainly the fruits and vegetables on the half of the plate, but also including whole grains and legumes. All right, hydration. Hydration levels can directly affect blood sugar levels. So if you think about if you're dehydrated, the concentration of water molecules in your blood are lower because you're dehydrated. You don't have enough water. So automatically the concentration of glucose molecules or sugar molecules will be higher. And this can directly impact your blood sugar levels, right? So you want to be choosing more sugar-free fluid options, drinking about half of your body weight in ounces daily. So take your body weight in pounds, cut it in half, and that's about the amount of ounces you'd want to drink of fluids every day. This is very nuanced, truly depends on your environment. Is it dry? Is it hot? Are you super active? Do you have any fluid restrictions? So it's a good starting point. But hydration is very important. And then a reminder, consistent meal pattern, like we talked about before. Don't skip meals. Really, really try to not go more than 4 to 5 hours without eating. And if you can't eat a full meal for whatever reason, maybe you're not feeling well, or you're not so much of a breakfast person, um, or maybe you have a meeting. I ate breakfast at around 8 o'clock this morning, and I had meetings and classes, but I made sure to at least have a snack before this workshop. So I know I'm gonna have lunch after, but I made sure to have a balanced snack. Um, so if you can't have a full meal, at least try to go for a snack that is, again, rich in fiber and rich in lean quality protein. And then minimal alcohol and no smoking. So why? Nicotine directly impacts your insulin resistance. So remember, insulin is that hormone that helps to regulate the amount of glucose or sugar in your blood. So your body can't use insulin as effectively to reduce blood sugar. And then alcohol, like I mentioned, it is a type of sugar and it will directly increase your own blood glucose levels. Okay. And then stress management and quality sleep. So finding appropriate and healthy stress management techniques So I put kind of think self-care because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of ways that you can manage stress. You just have to find what works for you. So I like to I like to use the term self-care because um, whatever you feel is caring for yourself could be a stress management technique. So that could be going for a walk, um, doing a puzzle. If you're more creative, maybe painting, drawing, writing in a journal, calling a friend, taking a bath, going to the farmer's market, going in nature. I could go on and on. So finding some kind of stress management techniques to make sure that you're not chronically stressed. And then do what you can to make sure that you sleep enough and well. And I like to ask, or I encourage you to ask yourself this question. Does my environment support quality sleep? So do you have blackout curtains? Is it bright? Do you have like a street light outside at night that's just shining in your windows? Is there a way you can block that out? Um, do you maybe need to sleep with a sound machine? Do you want to make sure that maybe you don't drink fluids an hour before going to bed so you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night to use the restroom? Maybe you can meditate or do some sort of breathing techniques before going to bed to kind of relax you. Do you have someone next to you that's snoring? Maybe kind of talking to a doctor to see what your options are to help reduce the snoring. So just asking yourself if your environment, oh, temperature too, temperature is a huge one. Just making sure the temperature in your room is at a stable temperature, not too hot, not too cold. So just kind of asking yourself what you need to have a healthier sleep environment. Well, this is kind of like your cheat sheet, if you will. We went into depth on each of these factors. But, if you feel like you just need kind of one page to look at to say, okay, how do I manage my blood sugar levels? What does that a balanced lifestyle look like? You could take a look at this. All right. Any questions at all? You're all good? No questions? If you do have any questions at all, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to either answer the question if I can, or just direct you to somebody that can answer that question for you.